Have you ever noticed that you spend more time dwelling on your wounds than celebrating your victories? That when someone asks you, "Who are you?" the first thing that comes to mind are your scars, your traumas, your pain? Take a deep breath, because what I'm about to tell you will hurt, but it will set you free. You're not just suffering. You're addicted to your suffering, and that addiction keeps you trapped in a version of yourself that never truly existed. Think about it. How many times have you told that same painful story from your childhood? That moment of rejection, that phrase your father said, that betrayal that scarred you? You tell it as if you're showing off a medal, as if you're presenting credentials of survival. I am like this because my father was absent. I don't trust because I've been betrayed before. I can't love because I've never been loved properly. Do you see the pattern? Each sentence begins with "I am," followed by a justification based on pain. You've turned your wounds into your identity. You've become your story of suffering. And now, you no longer know who you would be without it. Ramana Maharshi, the Indian sage who spent decades in profound silence observing the human mind, realized something frightening. Most people don't want to be free from suffering. They only want to understand it better, organize it, justify it, but never truly let go of it. Because letting go would mean losing the only thing you think defines you. Let me show you how this addiction works. When you were a child and you got hurt, what happened? You cried. Someone came to comfort you. You received attention, care, validation. Your pain gave you something you needed: connection. Then you grew up, and unconsciously, you learned that showing your wounds is the quickest way to be seen, to be taken seriously, to prove that you are deep, that you have lived, that you have substance. His suffering became his emotional bargaining chip. You join a group of friends and, instead of talking about your dreams, you talk about your problems. You meet someone new, and, instead of showing your light, you show your shadows first, as if testing them. Can you handle my pain? Because that's who I am. But it isn't. Carl Jung said, "What you don't bring to consciousness appears in your life as destiny, and what you're not bringing to consciousness is this: you're using your suffering as a shield, as an identity, as an excuse. You're afraid to be happy because you wouldn't know who you are anymore without your struggles. You sabotage healthy relationships because they don't feed into your 'I always choose the wrong people' narrative. You refuse help because solving your problems would mean losing the role you've played for so long: the survivor, the wounded, the misunderstood. And here's the most brutal truth of all: you are not trapped in the past. You are choosing to live in it. Because the past is predictable. The past gives you a ready-made script. The past tells you who you are, why you suffer, and why you don't need to change. The present? The present is terrifying. Because in the present you no longer have excuses. In the present, you would have to take responsibility. In the present, you would have to admit that you continue to suffer not because the world is cruel, but because you have learned to extract something from your suffering: attention, validation, identity, purpose. Ramana Maharshi used to ask his disciples, "Who are you without your history?" And most of them would panic. Because when you take away the history, when you take away the drama, when you take away the suffering, who is left? Silence is more frightening than pain. Because pain is familiar. Pain is your oldest companion. Pain made you who you think you are. And letting go of it would be like dying. But it wouldn't be death. It would be rebirth. So take another deep breath and ask yourself this question: what do I gain by continuing to suffer? Don't run away from this answer. It will hurt, but it will also show you the way out. Because as long as your suffering gives you something, attention, forgiveness, identity, you'll never truly let it go. You'll carry it like an old torn coat, complaining about the cold but refusing any new warm clothes offered to you. You are not your wounds. You are not your story. You are not the character you created to survive. You are what remains when all of this is silenced. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you exactly how this addiction works behind the scenes in your mind, and why you're so afraid to let go of the victim role, even when it's killing you inside. If you've made it this far, it's because some part of you already knows this, and she's ready to stop lying. Now comes the part nobody wants to hear, the part that will make you pause the video and think, this can't be true about me. But it is. You continue to suffer because suffering pays you off. And as long as it pays you off, you'll never break the addiction. Let me show you the invisible coins you receive every time you wallow in your pain. First coin. Attention. When you're doing well, nobody asks, "How are you?" with genuine concern. But when you're doing badly, oh, then everyone becomes your therapist. Then you become the center of attention. People call you, text you, ask you what happened. Your suffering gives you relevance, and you learn this early on. You learn that being well means being invisible. Being unwell means being seen. So, unconsciously, you sabotage your own peace because you don't want to be forgotten again. Second currency, validation. You know that feeling of having someone by your side saying, "You're right, he was wrong. You didn't deserve this. You're the victim here." That's validation, and it's addictive, because deep down you don't want to solve the problem. You want someone to confirm that you suffered, that you have the right to be resentful, that your anger is justified. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, saw this in the concentration camps. He realized that some people kept hatred alive because it was the only thing that still gave them an identity. To release hatred would be to release purpose. You do the same thing. Every time you tell that story, for the 10th time, every time you reinforce, "I am this way because they did this to me," you are not seeking healing. You are seeking witnesses to your suffering. Third coin. Sorry. This is the most dangerous of all. As long as you are the victim, you don't need to be responsible. As long as your parents are the villains, you don't need to grow up. As long as your trauma is to blame, you don't need to act. His suffering became his alibi. I can't have healthy relationships because my mother was toxic. I can't thrive because my father never believed in me. I can't trust because I've been betrayed before. See how each sentence frees you from action? How each wound becomes a free pass not to try? Nietzsche said something brutal. You don't want the truth. You want confirmation of your favorite lie. And your favorite lie is, I can't change because I am a product of what was done to me. But the truth? You can change. You just don't want to pay the price. Because change means giving up the role of victim. It means accepting that from today onward, your life is your responsibility. And that's terrifying. Fourth currency, identity. This is the deepest one. You've spent so much time being the hurt person, the betrayed one, the rejected one, the misunderstood one, that now you no longer know who you would be without those labels. Ramana Maharshi used to say, the ego survives through history. Without history, the ego disappears. And that's exactly what you're afraid of. Not losing the pain, but losing the self built around it. Who would you be if you stopped talking about your wounds? If you stopped using your scars as a way to introduce yourself? If you walked into a room and didn't have to prove that you'd suffered enough to be taken seriously? Would you be nobody? Or would you finally be yourself? Here's what nobody tells you. You are not trapped in the trauma. You are trapped in the emotional rebound of the trauma. Every time you relive the pain, you receive these 4 rewards. Attention, validation, apology, identity. And your brain, which is a survival machine, learns pain, reward. So he keeps you there. Not because you're a masochist, but because you're conditioned. Your suffering has become your job, and you're so afraid of being fired that you'd rather keep suffering than risk having nothing left to do with your mind. So answer me honestly. If you woke up tomorrow completely healed, would you feel relieved? Or would you feel a strange emptiness as if you had lost a part of yourself? If the answer bothered you, it's because you already know the truth. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you the only question Ramana Maharshi used to destroy this cycle at its root. A question so simple it seems silly, but so powerful that it can end the addiction once and for all. If you're ready to listen, continue. Because what's happening now is irreversible. Ramana Maharshi was 16 years old when he died, not literally, but he went through such a profound near-death experience that the teenager he was disappeared. And what remained was only pure consciousness, observing. From that day on, he only asked one question, a question so simple that people thought he was being simplistic, so direct that it bothered those who wanted complex answers. And the question was, who am I? Not in a philosophical sense, not as an essay topic, but as a brutal investigation of one's own mind, like a scalpel cutting through every layer of illusion. And it is this very question that will dismantle your addiction to suffering. You need to understand one thing. All your suffering happens because you believe you are someone. You believe there is a self that was hurt, a self that was betrayed, a self that was abandoned. But Ramana asked, who is this I that suffers? Think about it. When you say I am sad, who is sad? Who is observing the sadness? If you can perceive the emotion, you cannot be the emotion, because the observer is never the observed. When you say I am angry, who is angry, and who is aware that they are angry? Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Ramana went further. He said, until you realize that there is no fixed self, you will suffer, because you will defend, protect, and nurture an illusion. Let me show you how this works in practice. The next time you feel that familiar pain, that sadness, that resentment, that old hurt, stop and ask, who is feeling this? Don't answer with your name. Don't answer with your story. Dig deeper. I'm feeling it. Okay. But who is this I? It's me, the person who went through that. But who remembers going through that? I'm remembering. And who's noticing that you're remembering? See what happens? Every time you try to grasp the self, it slips away. Because the self isn't a thing. It's a thought, a belief, a story you tell yourself. And the suffering? Suffering only exists because you believe there's someone inside there to suffer. But when you truly ask, who am I, with brutal honesty, you realize something terrifying. There's nobody there. There are thoughts. There are emotions. There are memories. There are sensations. But there is no solid, permanent self that needs to carry all of that. Nisargadatta Maharaj, another Indian master, said, suffering is caused by identification with the body-mind. You are not that. You are the consciousness in which it appears. Imagine a movie screen. On the screen they show films of tragedy, drama, horror. People die, betray, suffer. But the screen never suffers. The screen only reflects. You are not the movie. You are the screen. But you've spent your whole life so identified with the movie character that you've forgotten it's just the setting where everything happens. And that is why Ramana insisted, who am I? Because every time you truly ask that question, you distance yourself from the character. You stop defending the story. You stop fueling the drama. And then something miraculous happens. Suffering loses its host. It keeps appearing. Because thoughts appear, emotions appear, but there's no one clinging to them anymore. There's no one saying this is mine and this is me. So take a deep breath, because what I'm about to tell you will seem impossible. You don't need to heal your wounds. You need to realize that no one is hurting. It's not the trauma that needs to be resolved. It's the belief that you are the trauma that needs to be dissolved. Your whole life you've tried to fix the character, improve the story, find a happy ending for the movie. But Ramana is telling you, leave the movie theater. Don't fight your thoughts. Don't suppress your emotions. Just ask, who is thinking? Who is feeling? I observed it. Don't answer. Just observe. And in the silence of that observation, the addiction begins to crumble. But there's a problem. A huge problem that nobody tells you about. When you begin to awaken from this addiction, when you begin to see through the illusion of the self, something terrifying happens. You panic. Because if you're not the character, who are you? And if you no longer have a story to tell, what's left for you? And it is about this terror, this moment of choice between continuing to sleep or waking up completely, that I will talk about in the next chapter. Because what comes next is the part that most people can't get through. There's a moment in the awakening process that nobody warns you about. A moment when you're caught between two worlds. You can no longer fully believe your story, but you haven't let go of it yet. You've seen through the illusion of self, but you're still terrified to let it go. And in that space, between the comfortable lie and the naked truth, you panic. Because for the first time in your life you realize something brutal. Continuing to suffer is a choice, and it always has been. This is the moment when most people give up, because it's easier to return to familiar pain than to move forward into the unknown void. Let me explain what happens. When you truly begin to use Ramana's question, "Who am I?" something inside you starts to crumble. The stories you told yourself begin to lose their power. The characters you played begin to seem false, and then panic sets in. If I am not my wounds, who am I? If I no longer have a story to tell, how will people understand me? If I'm no longer the victim, what is my purpose? Kierkegaard called this the vertigo of freedom. That moment when you realize you can choose, and precisely because of that, you despair. Because choosing means taking responsibility, and taking responsibility means you no longer have excuses. Here's what nobody tells you about healing. Healing doesn't set you free. It terrifies you first. Because when you heal, you lose your identity. You lose your role. You lose the automatic empathy people had for you. Who will call you if you're no longer in crisis? Who will validate you if you're no longer complaining? Who will you be if you're no longer the one who suffered? And that's where most people choose to return. They return to the drama, to the resentment, to the bitterness, because at least there, they know who they are. At least there, they have a script. Gabor Mate, a trauma specialist, realized this while working with drug addicts. He said, "The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. But what if your only way to connect was through pain? What if the only way you learned to be loved was by being hurt? Then you have an impossible dilemma. Healing means losing connection. So you choose to remain sick. Now I'm going to tell you the hardest truth of all. You are not trapped in suffering because you don't know how to get out. You are trapped because you are afraid of what comes next. You are afraid of peace. Because peace is silent. And in silence there is no drama, no story, no I. You're afraid to be happy. Because if you are happy, you'll have to admit that you always could have been. And that would mean you chose to suffer. And that's unbearable. So you're stuck in the middle ground. You pretend you're trying to get better. You go to therapy, read books, meditate, but always with one foot out the door. Always holding the pain with one hand while reaching out the other for healing. And then you go neither forward nor backward. You get stuck in emotional purgatory. Suffering enough to feel alive, but not enough to seek real help. Ramana Maharshi saw this all the time. People came to him asking for enlightenment. But when he showed them the door, they retreated. Because the door didn't lead to a better self. It led to the end of the self. And that's not evolution. It's death. Death of the ego. Death of the story. Death of the character. So now you need to choose. And there's no point in pretending you don't know this. Because now you do. You can go back, you can close this video, go back to your automatic thoughts, go back to your comfortable stories. No one will judge you. It's easier that way. Or you can move on. You can overcome terror. You can let go of the character. You can accept that you are nothing like what you thought you were. And precisely because of that, you can be everything, but I'm not going to lie to you. Choosing the truth hurts more than continuing to live a lie. At first, because lies keep you busy. The truth leaves you empty. But it is only in this void that something new can be born. And if you choose to move forward, if you choose to overcome your fear and break free from addiction, I'll show you exactly how to do it. In the next and final chapter, I will give you practical techniques based on Ramana Maharshi. The real tools to break the cycle, the step-by-step guide to living beyond the story. But only continue if you really want to. Because once you see it, there's no way to unlive it. Are you ready? If you've made it this far, you've made a choice. You chose truth over comfort, freedom over identity, emptiness over drama. And now I'm going to show you how to do this in practice. Because understanding isn't enough. You can understand everything I've said and still fall back into the addiction tomorrow morning, when that automatic thought appears, when that memory pulls you back, when that familiar feeling calls you back. So let's get straight to the point. How do you break the cycle? First technique: observation without judgment. The next time suffering appears, and it will, because the brain is conditioned, don't fight it. Don't try to suppress it. Don't pretend it's not there. Just observe. Ramana Maharshi said, "Thoughts are like unwanted visitors. The more you fight them, the longer they stay. But if you simply observe them without reacting, they will go away on their own." So do this. When sadness comes, don't say, "I am sad." Say, "There is sadness here. Do you see the difference?" You've taken the I out of the equation. You are no longer the owner of the emotion. You are merely the space where it appears. When anger arises, don't say, "I am angry." Say, "Anger is rising." When the thought, "I always fail," appears, don't say, "I am a failure." Say, "There's a thought telling me that I've failed." Does it seem simple? It is. But it's revolutionary. Because every time you do that, you break the identification. And without identification, the addiction loses its power. Second technique: go back to the question. Whenever you realize you're immersed in the story, reliving the trauma, fueling resentment, reinforcing the pain, stop. And ask, who's thinking about this? Don't answer intellectually, feel the question. Let it cut through the mental fog. Who is remembering? Who is suffering? Who is here now? And notice the silence that follows the question. Because in this silence, there is no story. In this silence, there is no I. In this silence, there is no suffering. Ramana would spend hours in silence, simply asking himself that question, and he discovered something powerful. When you truly ask, "Who am I?" the mind stops working. Because the mind doesn't have an answer for that. The mind only knows how to operate with concepts, memories, stories. But the real self is nothing like that. Then the mind freezes, and in the vacuum that remains, you finally rest. Third technique: active de-identification. This is powerful and terrifying. Every day when you wake up, before picking up your phone, before diving into automatic thoughts, do this exercise. Sit down, take a deep breath, and repeat mentally, "I am not my body. This body is here, but I am not it. I am not my thoughts. Thoughts appear, but I am not them. I am not my emotions. Emotions arise, but I am not them. I am not my story. The story happened, but I am not it." And then he asks, "So, who am I?" And he remains silent. He doesn't try to answer. He simply feels the emptiness of that question. Nisargadatta Maharaj did this every day, and he would say, "You just need to stop believing that you are who you think you are. The rest happens on its own." Because once you let go of the belief lets go of you. Fourth technique: breaking the reward cycle. Remember the 4 coins that suffering pays you: attention, validation, forgiveness, identity. Now you need to consciously refuse those coins. When someone asks you, "How are you?" and you feel like wallowing in your pain, take a deep breath and say, I'm fine. Not because you're pretending, but because you're choosing not to feed the cycle. When you feel the urge to tell that story for the 1,000th time, stop and ask yourself, why do I need to tell this again? What am I looking for? If you're seeking attention, seek it in a healthy way. Create something. Share something new. Show who you are beyond the pain. If it's validation, validate it yourself. Say, yes, this happened, yes, it hurt, and now it's over. If it's an excuse, take responsibility. Say, that's no longer an excuse. From now on, I choose. This will hurt at first, because you'll feel invisible. You'll feel disconnected. You'll feel lost. But it's only by going through this discomfort that you break free from the addiction. Now listen to me carefully. Breaking the addiction to suffering doesn't mean you'll never feel pain again. It means you stop clinging to it. It means you stop building your identity around it. The pain will continue to appear because you are human, but you no longer need to make it your home. Ramana Maharshi went through periods of intense physical pain in the last years of his life. Cancer, real suffering. But when asked if he was suffering, he would say, "There is pain in the body, but I am not suffering." Because he wasn't the body. He wasn't the pain. He was merely the conscious space where all of that appeared and disappeared. And you are too. You are not your wounds. You are not your story. You are not the character you created to survive. You are the silence that observes all of this. And when you finally rest in that silence, when you stop fighting, defending, feeding the self, something miraculous happens. You realize you were never really imprisoned. The door has always been open. You were just so busy guarding the prison that you forgot to look for the exit. So take a deep breath and make a choice. You can go back to autopilot. You can go back to your stories. You can go back to your comfortable addiction. Or you can start today. You can start by observing, asking questions, letting go. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be fast. You just have to be honest. Because every time you truly ask, who am I? You die a little and are reborn a little. And in the end, what remains is not a better me. It's simply freedom. Silent, empty, complete. And if you felt something watching this video, if something inside you stirred, it's because you already know this. You always knew. You were just waiting for permission to release it, then let go. And you discover who you are when you no longer need to be anyone else.